Cowboy accepted an Apache woman as a debt settlement, then learned she was the chief's daughter. The sun rose slowly over the dry land near the border, spreading pale light across cracked soil and tired grass. This land had once been full of life, but now it looked worn and broken, much like the man who lived on it. Thomas Reed stood outside his small wooden house, staring at the empty cattle pen. Years ago, it had been full of strong animals, their sounds filling the mornings. Now only dust and silence remained. Thomas was in his early 30s, but hardship had aged him. Deep lines marked his face, and his shoulders always seemed heavy, as if he carried an invisible weight. He had come west with hope, dreaming of land, freedom, and a future he could build with his own hands. For a while, things had gone well. He worked hard, saved what little he could, and believed that patience would reward him. But drought did not care about effort, and bad luck showed no mercy. 2 years without proper rain had destroyed most of his crops. Then sickness had taken several of his cattle. Each loss pushed him deeper into debt. To survive, Thomas borrowed money and supplies from a trader named Caldwell, a man who ran a general store near the frontier crossing. Caldwell was known for lending help with a smile, but collecting payment with a cold heart. Everyone knew that dealing with him meant trouble, but when hunger knocks, pride often opens the door. That morning, Thomas was waiting for Caldwell to arrive. His stomach felt tight, not from hunger alone, but from fear. He already knew why Caldwell was coming. The debt had grown too large, and Thomas had nothing left to offer. No cattle, no crops, no savings, only land that was barely worth anything in its current state. A cloud of dust appeared on the road. Soon, Caldwell's wagon came into view, pulled by 2 tired horses. Thomas watched as it stopped near the house. Caldwell stepped down, adjusting his coat and smiling as if this were a friendly visit. 2 other men stayed on the wagon, quiet and watchful. "Morning, Thomas," Caldwell said calmly. "Looks like another dry day." Thomas nodded. "You didn't come to talk about the weather," Caldwell chuckled softly. "Straight to the point. I respect that." They walked a few steps away from the house. Caldwell's eyes moved across the land, taking in its emptiness. He shook his head, pretending to feel sympathy. "You owe me more than money now," Caldwell said. "Supplies feed tools. I've been patient." "I know," Thomas replied. "If you give me time—" "I've already given time," Caldwell interrupted. "What I need now is settlement." Thomas clenched his fists. "I don't have anything left." Caldwell's smile did not fade. "You might be surprised." Before Thomas could ask what he meant, Caldwell signaled to the men on the wagon. One of them jumped down and pulled back a canvas cover. Thomas's breath caught when he saw a young woman sitting there. She was not dressed like the settlers Thomas knew. Her clothing was simple but carefully made, and her dark hair was tied neatly behind her. She sat straight, her hands folded in her lap, her face calm but unreadable. She did not look frightened, nor did she look angry. She looked quiet, watchful. Thomas turned to Caldwell, confused. "What is this?" "A solution," Caldwell said easily. "I had a disagreement with an Apache group over supplies. Long story short, this woman is part of the settlement. You take her in and a portion of your debt is cleared." Thomas felt his heart race. "That's not right. She's a person, not payment." Caldwell's eyes hardened. "This is how things work out here. You want to argue or you want relief." Thomas looked back at the woman. She met his eyes for a brief moment. There was no begging in her gaze, no tears, just a steady look that made his chest feel tight. "I can't do this," Thomas said quietly. Caldwell leaned closer. "You don't have a choice. Refuse and I take your land by the end of the week. Agree and you get breathing room. She works, helps around the place, that's all." Thomas felt trapped. He thought of the empty pantry, the unpaid notes, the land that was all he had left. He hated the idea being forced on him, hated Caldwell for even suggesting it. But reality pressed down on him like the hot sun overhead. Slowly he nodded. "Fine," he said, "but she's not a servant. She stays here by agreement, not force." Caldwell laughed softly. Call it whatever helps you sleep. The trader motioned for the woman to step down. She did so gracefully, touching the ground with steady feet. One of the men cut the rope that had loosely tied her wrist, more for show than restraint. She did not rub it or complain. She simply stood there. Caldwell climbed back onto his wagon. We'll consider part of your debt settled. Behave yourself, Thomas, and don't get curious about things that don't concern you. With that, the wagon rolled away, leaving a trail of dust and silence behind. Thomas stood there, unsure of what to say or do. The woman looked around slowly, taking in the land, the house, the sky. Her expression did not change. "My name is Thomas," he said at last. "You're safe here. No one will hurt you." She nodded slightly, as if acknowledging the words, but she did not speak. He showed her the small room beside the kitchen where she could stay. It was clean but plain. She set her few belongings down carefully, including a small leather pouch and a necklace she wore close to her chest. Thomas noticed the symbols carved into it but did not ask. The day passed quietly. She helped without being told, fetching water, sweeping the floor, preparing simple food with skill that surprised him. Everything she did was careful and deliberate. She moved with confidence, not like someone who felt owned or broken. As evening came, Thomas sat outside, watching the sky turn orange and purple. The woman joined him, sitting a short distance away. For a long time, neither spoke. "Do you have a name?" Thomas asked gently. She hesitated, then said softly, "Naya." He nodded. "That's a good name." She looked at him, her dark eyes reflecting the fading light. "This place, it is not where I was meant to stay," she said slowly, choosing her words with care. Thomas swallowed. "I know, I didn't want this either." Naya looked away toward the distant hills. "Some debts are not meant to be paid this way." Her words stayed with him long after she returned inside. That night, Thomas lay awake, listening to the wind move through the dry grass. He felt uneasy, as if he had stepped into something far bigger than his own troubles. He had accepted a settlement to save himself, but deep down, he knew the cost had not truly been counted yet. Somewhere in the darkness beyond his land, unseen eyes watched the ranch, and with them came the quiet promise that this story was only beginning. Morning came quietly to the ranch. The sun rose behind the low hills, casting long shadows across the dry ground. Thomas woke early, as he always did, but that day felt different. For a moment, he forgot that someone else was under his roof. Then he heard soft movement inside the house, careful footsteps that did not belong to him. He sat up slowly, rubbing his face. A sense of unease mixed with responsibility settled in his chest. He had agreed to something he never wanted, and now he had to live with it. As he stepped outside, the cool air filled his lungs. He expected to see Naya waiting or standing unsure of herself. Instead, he found the fire already going. She was crouched near it, adding small pieces of wood, her movements calm and practiced. A pot of water warmed above the flame. She looked up when she sensed him, not startled, just aware. "Good morning," Thomas said, unsure if that was the right thing to say. She nodded. "Morning." Her English was slow but clear. It surprised him again. He had expected silence, maybe confusion. Instead, she seemed steady, like someone who had already accepted many difficult things. "You didn't have to do that," he said, pointing to the fire. "I like mornings," she replied. "They are honest." Thomas did not know what to say to that. He washed his face at the basin while she prepared simple food from what little they had. She used herbs he did not recognize, pulling them from the small pouch she carried. The smell was different but comforting. They ate in near silence. Thomas watched her from time to time, trying not to stare. Everything about her felt out of place on the ranch, yet she moved as if she belonged wherever she stood. After breakfast, Thomas cleared his throat. "There's work to do, not much but some." She stood immediately. "Show me." He led her around the land, explaining what needed attention. The fence near the east side had fallen, and weeds were overtaking what used to be a small garden. The well bucket needed repair. He expected her to struggle or hesitate. Instead, she listened carefully, watching his hands, learning quickly. When he handed her tools, she accepted them naturally. Her grip was firm, her balance sure. She worked without complaint, her focus steady. Thomas found himself watching her more than the work itself. "You've done this kind of work before," he said. She nodded. "Different land, same needs." As the sun climbed higher, the heat settled in. Thomas offered her water often. She accepted but never asked. At one point, she lifted her face to the sky, closing her eyes for a brief second, as if listening to something only she could hear. By midday, dust rose from the road again. Thomas stiffened, fear tightening his chest. Visitors usually meant trouble. He watched as two riders passed slowly, their eyes scanning the ranch. They did not stop, but they did not rush either. Naya noticed his tension. "They are watching," she said quietly. "Friends of yours?" Thomas asked. "Not enemies," she replied. That answer unsettled him more than a clear warning would have. After the riders disappeared, Thomas tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered like a shadow. In the afternoon, Naya surprised him again. She approached the neglected garden and knelt, touching the soil, crumbling it between her fingers. She frowned slightly. "This land is tired," she said, "but not finished." Thomas sighed. "Feels finished to me." She looked up at him. "Land listens to patience." Without waiting for permission, she began clearing weeds, moving with care. She showed him how to loosen the soil gently, how to plant in ways that kept moisture longer. These were small things, but they carried quiet wisdom. "Where did you learn this?" he asked. She paused, then said, "From my mother and her mother." The mention of family made Thomas think of his own. He had left them years ago, chasing dreams of independence. He wondered what they would think if they saw him now. As evening approached, clouds gathered faintly on the horizon. Thomas noticed Naya watching them closely. "Rain?" he asked, almost hopeful. "Maybe," she said. "Not today, soon." That night they ate together again. The food tasted better than it had in weeks. Afterward, Thomas fixed the well bucket while Naya held the lantern. Their hands brushed once, briefly. Both pulled away, more aware than they wanted to be. When darkness settled fully, the sounds of the land grew louder. Insects, wind, distant movement. Thomas sat on the steps, sharpening a tool more out of habit than need. Naya joined him again, keeping respectful distance. "Why did you not run?" Thomas asked suddenly. "When Caldwell left." She was quiet for a long moment. "Running without direction is not freedom." He nodded slowly. "You don't seem afraid of me." "I watched you," she said. "You did not look at me like a thing." Her words stayed with him. He realized how close he had come to being someone he did not want to be. Later that night, Thomas woke to a strange feeling. Something was wrong. He listened carefully. Outside, faint movement disturbed the stillness. He reached for his lamp and stepped out. Near the edge of the property, he saw shapes in the darkness. Horses, riders. They did not cross the boundary. They waited. Thomas's heart pounded. He raised the lamp slightly, not as a threat but as a signal. One of the riders lifted a hand in return, then slowly turned away. The group disappeared as silently as they had come. When Thomas turned back, he found Naya standing behind him. "They came to see how I was treated," she said. "And?" he asked. "They are still deciding," she replied. That night sleep did not come easily. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm, work in the mornings, small improvements to the land, shared meals. Few words but growing understanding. Thomas noticed that Naya never removed her necklace. Sometimes, when she thought she was alone, she held it tightly, her expression distant. One afternoon, a trader stopped by. A different one, younger, nervous. His eyes flicked toward Naya with curiosity and something like recognition. He did not ask questions, but when he left, he warned Thomas. "You should be careful," he said. "People are talking." "About what?" Thomas asked. The man hesitated. "About who you have with you." After he left, Thomas felt anger rise. "You're not safe here," he said, not accusing her but himself. Naya met his gaze. "Safety is never free." That evening she finally told him a little more, not everything, just enough. "I was given, not taken," she said. "To stop something worse." Thomas clenched his jaw. "That's not right." She looked at him calmly. "It is real." The weight of her words pressed on him. He realized that her presence was tied to something larger than his debt or Caldwell's greed. Lines were being drawn around his small piece of land, whether he wanted them or not. As the moon rose, Naya stood and looked toward the distant hills again. "Soon," she said quietly, "you will have to choose." "Choose what?" Thomas asked. She turned to him, her face serious, her voice steady. "Whether this place is only where you live or where you stand." Thomas watched her walk back inside, the door closing softly behind her. Alone under the stars, he felt the truth of her words settle deep inside him. He had thought his greatest struggle was survival. Now he knew it was something else entirely, and whatever was coming, it would not allow him to remain neutral for long. The days after Naya's arrival passed with a strange rhythm. Thomas found himself watching her closely, trying to understand more about who she was. Each action she took, every quiet word, seemed to carry hidden meaning. There was a sense that she belonged to a world he did not know, a world much larger and more complex than his small ranch. One morning, Thomas was repairing a fence near the east pasture when Naya approached quietly, carrying a small bundle. She did not speak at first, simply set the bundle down on a wooden post and looked at him with calm, steady eyes. "What's this?" he asked, curiosity and caution mixing in his tone. "For you," she said simply. "You will need it." He unwrapped the bundle and found tools and materials of surprising quality, leather, cord, and small iron pieces that could be used to repair the wagon, mend harnesses, or even secure gates. He frowned. "Where did you get these?" "My people," she said quietly. "They prepare." "Always?" Thomas studied her face, searching for more than the words she said. There was a quiet authority in her, a self-assuredness that unsettled him. She moved with careful precision, like someone who had been trained her entire life to notice every detail. The way she handled the tools, the way she adjusted a strap or folded the leather, showed experience far beyond a simple servant's work. That afternoon, he watched as she tended to the horses. She spoke to them softly, using sounds and gestures Thomas had never understood. The horses responded immediately, calm and obedient. He realized then that she was not ordinary. The way she moved, the way she observed everything, suggested knowledge and skill he could not explain. Later, Thomas noticed a group of riders near the horizon. He tensed, instinctively reaching for his rifle, but Naya's calm voice stopped him. "They are not here to harm you," she said. "Who are they then?" Thomas asked, keeping his eyes on the distant figures. "They are watching me, testing." "Testing for what?" he demanded. She shook her head slightly. "For you, for me, for what is coming." Thomas felt a chill, though the sun was high in the sky. He wanted to ask more, but he didn't. He did not want to seem afraid, yet fear had settled deep in his chest. That evening, a traveling missionary arrived at the ranch, seeking shelter and supplies. Thomas welcomed him in, offering food and a place to rest. Over dinner, the man spoke of local events, news from other settlements, and rumors of Apache interactions with traders and settlers. Thomas mentioned Naya cautiously, careful not to reveal too much. The missionary's eyes widened slightly. "She is the daughter of the chief," the man said quietly, leaning closer. "I met her family years ago. If you have her here, you are walking a dangerous line." Thomas froze. "What do you mean?" "She was sent away for safety, not as a servant. If anyone from her tribe realizes where she is, they will come. And if the wrong people find her first, it could mean bloodshed." The words sank into Thomas like stones. All this time, he had believed he was simply helping Caldwell settle a debt. Now the truth was clear. Naya was far more important than he had ever imagined. That night he confronted her quietly. "Is it true?" he asked, his voice low so the missionary could not hear. Naya nodded slowly. "I am the chief's daughter." I was sent to prevent war, to keep peace. Thomas ran a hand through his hair. Caldwell knew. She did not answer, only looked at him, her dark eyes steady. You should have told me, he said. I could have, I don't know, done something, protected you. You are protecting me, she replied, by keeping me here, by learning to see. Thomas realized then that he had underestimated the situation entirely. The debt settlement was not just about money, it was a political arrangement, a carefully balanced situation designed to prevent violence between her people and the traders. And he, unknowingly, had become part of it. The next few days were tense. Thomas noticed more signs that Naya was being observed. Traders lingered longer than necessary when passing by. Strangers rode near the ranch, their intentions unclear. And Naya, while calm, seemed increasingly alert, her eyes always scanning the horizon, her movements precise. One afternoon, she took him aside near the dry creek bed. You need to understand, she said softly. This land is your home, but it is also the stage for something larger. You will have to make choices soon, choices about who you are and what you will do. Thomas looked at her, confusion and fear battling within him. Choices? What do you mean? You will see, she said. The people who sent me, the people who watch, they are testing you. Your intentions, your heart. If you fail, there is no one to blame but yourself. Her words were cryptic, but the seriousness in her tone left no doubt. Thomas felt the weight of responsibility press down harder than ever. He had once thought his biggest struggle was survival, keeping the ranch alive, paying his debts, protecting what little he had. Now he realized the struggle was far more complicated. That evening he kept watch outside, sitting on the porch with his rifle across his lap. Naya sat beside him, quiet but alert, her eyes catching every movement in the distance. They did not speak much. Words were not necessary. The tension between them was enough to fill the night. Suddenly, a distant sound broke the stillness. A single horn, faint but deliberate. Thomas tensed immediately. Naya's eyes met his. They have come, she said. He rose slowly, keeping his movements calm. Who? They are testing you, she repeated. The chief's people. They want to know if you can be trusted. Thomas felt a mix of fear and anger. Fear for his life, anger at Caldwell, and frustration at his own helplessness. And if I fail, he asked quietly. Then I return, she said simply, and you will not be left untouched. That night sleep was impossible. Thomas thought of the riders he had seen, the missionaries' warning and Naya's calm authority. He realized that he had entered a world he did not understand, and yet there was no turning back. Over the following days, Thomas began observing Naya more closely. He noticed her attention to detail, the way she communicated without words, and her ability to sense danger before it appeared. He began to respect her skill, her courage, and her intelligence. One evening he asked her, "Did you ever want to leave your people?" She looked at him carefully. "I never asked for this, but I do not hate them. I do not hate my place. My duty is not about desire, it is about balance." Thomas understood, at least partly, that she carried a responsibility far heavier than his debts or the failing land. She was not just a woman placed on his ranch, she was a living symbol of peace, a piece in a larger game of survival and politics. As the days turned into weeks, Thomas began to see the truth in her words. He realized that Naya's presence was teaching him something he had never learned before. The difference between fear and courage, between ownership and respect, between survival and honor. And he knew, deep down, that the next choice he made would change both of their lives forever. The quiet rhythm of the ranch continued, but underneath it, an invisible tension grew. Riders still appeared on the horizon, observers still watched from a distance, and Thomas and Naya moved through their days with a careful understanding that every action mattered. Thomas began preparing, not just for survival, but for the day when he would have to face the truth fully. That this woman was not only part of his life now, but also part of something much larger, something he could neither ignore nor control. And somewhere beyond the hills, Decisions were being made that would soon bring that truth to the forefront, testing him in ways he had never imagined. If you want, I can now expand part 4 in the same style and word count, keeping it intense, suspenseful, and emotionally gripping. Do you want me to do that next? Thomas woke before dawn, as he often did, but this morning the air felt heavier than usual. The sky was still dark, and the faint chill of night clung to the land. He moved quietly around the small ranch, checking fences, the water supply, and the remaining cattle. Despite the work, his mind was not on the chores. It was on Naya, on the riders they had seen, and on the mysterious weight of responsibility that seemed to press down on him more with every passing day. Naya had been awake for some time already, moving silently through the house. Thomas heard the soft scraping of her boots against the wooden floor and smelled the faint smoke of the fire she had already started. She had prepared a small breakfast, simple bread and dried fruit, and a pot of weak coffee. The smell of it made him realize how hungry he truly was. He sat quietly as she placed a cup in front of him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other. No words were necessary. The bond that had formed in silence over the past weeks had grown stronger. Each action they had shared, each glance exchanged, had deepened their understanding of one another. Thomas finally spoke. "We can't go on like this forever," he said, his voice low. "Something is coming. I can feel it." Naya nodded slightly, her dark eyes calm and unshaken. "I have been preparing for this," she said. "You must prepare too. Soon, choices will need to be made. Actions cannot be delayed." Thomas set his cup down, tension coiling through him. "I've been thinking, I don't know what the right choice is. I don't even know all the dangers yet." "You will," she said simply. "You will see soon enough, but the right choice is never easy." After breakfast, Thomas and Naya worked together to repair the fences, reinforce the pens, and tidy the land as best they could. Every movement, every decision, felt charged with meaning. Thomas noticed how Naya moved with precision and authority, guiding him without commanding him, correcting small mistakes without harsh words. Her presence was both calming and unsettling. She was not afraid, yet she carried a sense of warning that Thomas could not ignore. Later that day, a rider approached the ranch cautiously. Thomas tensed, ready to raise his rifle, but Naya motioned for him to stay calm. The rider stopped at the edge of the property, his horse snorting softly, and raised a hand in greeting. Thomas did not recognize him, but there was no threat in the man's posture. "Thomas Reed," the rider called. "Yes," Thomas replied cautiously. "I have a message," the man said. "From your neighbors and from others who watch the land. They know you have a guest here. They are concerned for your safety and hers." Thomas frowned. "Who are you really?" The rider hesitated. "I am only a messenger. Others will judge your actions, but I bring a warning. Trust and loyalty are more important now than survival. Decisions made in fear will not protect you." The man left as quietly as he had come, leaving Thomas staring after him. Naya stood silently nearby, watching him carefully. "What did he mean?" Thomas asked finally. "Those who watch are testing your heart," she said. "They want to know if you can act with honor even when the cost is high, and the cost will be high." Thomas felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He had never been tested like this before. His entire life had been about survival, cattle, land, debts. But this was different. This was about trust, responsibility, and something far larger than himself. Over the next few days, Thomas prepared quietly. He worked harder than ever, repairing fences, cleaning water troughs, and ensuring that every part of the ranch was secure. He practiced moving quietly, listening for sounds beyond the house, and keeping watch during the night. Every rustle of the wind, every shadow on the horizon made him alert. Naya remained close, silent but observant. She taught him small lessons in awareness, how to notice subtle changes in the landscape, how to read signs in the movement of animals, and how to sense the presence of others before they revealed themselves. Thomas learned quickly, realizing that survival was not only about work or strength, It was about understanding and respect for what was around him. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Thomas noticed a larger group of riders approaching. This time there was no mistaking their intent. They rode fast and cautiously, scanning the land as they came. Thomas instinctively reached for his rifle, but Naya held out a hand. "They are not here to harm you directly," she said. "They come to judge. You must decide how to act." Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. He felt the weight of every choice pressing down on him. If he acted with fear, there could be consequences. If he acted with courage and honor, the outcome might be different, but the risk was greater. The riders arrived at the edge of the property and slowed. Their leader stepped forward, removing his hat in a sign of respect. Thomas lowered his rifle slightly, trying to remain calm. Naya stepped beside him, her presence steadying him in ways he could not explain. "Thomas Reed," the leader called, his voice firm but measured. "We have come to see if the man who claims responsibility for this woman can be trusted. We know of her importance. You will be judged by your actions tonight." Thomas's heart pounded. He did not fully understand what they expected, but he knew that honesty, courage, and respect were his only weapons. He nodded, keeping his voice calm. "I will not harm her. I will protect her." Naya watched him closely, her eyes dark and unreadable. "That is the first test," she said quietly. "There are more." As night fell, Thomas prepared the ranch as best he could. He secured the animals, lit lanterns in strategic locations, and stayed alert. Naya moved silently beside him, guiding without speaking. Together they worked as a team, blending skill and intuition. Hours passed. The riders observed from a distance, but no attack came. Instead, they rode back and forth, testing his patience, his judgment, and his courage. Thomas realized that every action he took, every decision about where to place a lantern, how to respond to a sound, how he treated Naya, was being observed. At one point, a stray horse wandered near the fence. Thomas instinctively raised his rifle, but Naya placed her hand on his arm. "Do not act in haste," she whispered. "Control fear, show respect." He lowered the rifle, letting the horse pass. That small act, unnoticed by anyone but Naya, felt like a victory. He understood that strength was not always about force. It was about wisdom, patience, and honor. By the time the moon rose high in the sky, Thomas was exhausted but alert. The riders had not left, but their observation had become less rigid. They had seen his care for the land, his attention to Naya, and his cautious respect for the unknown. Naya turned to him quietly. "You have passed part of the test," she said softly. "The others will judge further, but tonight you have shown heart." Thomas exhaled slowly, feeling relief, but he knew the challenges were far from over. He had learned that survival was no longer about cattle or debts. It was about trust, honor, and courage, qualities he had never fully tested before. Over the next few days, Thomas noticed small changes. The distant observers became less frequent. Traders passing by nodded respectfully. Even the neighboring ranchers seemed to treat him differently, as if sensing a shift in his presence. Through it all, Naya remained by his side, her calm strength guiding him. She never gave him direct instructions, but her quiet wisdom shaped his actions. Thomas realized that he had grown in ways he never expected. He was no longer just a man trying to survive. He was a man learning to act with integrity, even when the stakes were high. One afternoon, as they worked in the garden, Naya spoke quietly. "Soon, you will face a choice that will determine more than your life. You will choose whether to protect what is right, even when it is dangerous." Thomas looked at her, his heart pounding. "I don't know if I can." "You already can," she replied. "You just need to believe it." That evening, Thomas sat on the porch, staring at the horizon. He thought of the coming days, the riders, the traders, and the uncertain future. But for the first time in a long time, he also thought of courage, honor, and trust. He realized that the greatest danger was not the outsiders or the debts. It was failing to act rightly when it mattered most. And in the quiet night, with Naya beside him, Thomas felt the first stirrings of true resolve. He knew that soon, everything would change, and he would have to make choices that no amount of preparation could fully guarantee. But he also knew that he would face them with a new understanding, that courage and honor were worth more than fear, and that trust and respect could shape outcomes far beyond the reach of any debt or threat. The ranch remained quiet under the stars, but the air carried a promise of the trials to come. And Thomas, for the first time in years, felt ready to meet them. The dawn was pale and quiet, the air cool against Thomas's face as he stepped outside. The ranch looked unchanged, yet Thomas felt a shift in the land, as if it held its breath for what was coming. The weeks of tension, observation, and quiet preparation had come to this moment. Naya was already awake, moving gracefully through the house, her dark eyes calm and determined as always. She carried herself with a quiet authority that reminded Thomas of the seriousness of their situation. "Today," she said softly, "the choice will come. You must decide what kind of man you will be." Thomas nodded, swallowing hard. He felt the weight of responsibility pressing down like never before. He had lived his life mostly for survival, for debts, for land and cattle. But now the choice was far greater. It was about honor, courage, and the life of another person who had been placed in his care. The morning passed with routine work, tending the animals, repairing fences, and checking supplies. Yet there was a tension under every action, a silent pressure that Thomas could not ignore. Every sound, every movement in the distance kept him alert. Naya moved with quiet efficiency, guiding him without words. Thomas began to realize just how much he had learned from her in the past weeks. He understood the land better, noticed the smallest signs of approaching danger, and had learned patience in ways he never thought possible. As the sun climbed higher, riders appeared on the horizon. This time there was no hesitation, no testing. They rode with purpose, their horses thundering across the dry grass. Thomas's heart pounded as he reached for his rifle, but Naya placed her hand on his arm. "Remember what you've learned," she said. "Act with honor, not fear." Thomas lowered the rifle slightly, focusing on what she had taught him. He realized that his strength was not only in his arms but in his decisions. Every choice mattered. Every action had consequences. The riders approached cautiously, slowing as they neared the ranch. Their leader dismounted and walked forward, removing his hat in a gesture of respect. Thomas remained calm, his stance firm yet open. He knew he could not show fear or anger, only resolve. "You have cared for her and protected her," the leader said, his voice serious but not hostile. "We have observed your actions. The chief's daughter is safe with you, but the final choice is yours. You must decide if she will remain with her people or if her path will change because of your decisions." Thomas's heart raced. He thought of the past weeks, the quiet moments with Naya, the lessons she had taught him, the danger they had both faced. He realized that this was not about ownership or debt. It was about respect, trust, and the right thing to do. "I will not harm her," Thomas said firmly. "She will be safe and I will honor her choices." Naya stepped forward, her eyes meeting his. "That is the choice that matters," she said. "Courage is not in taking but in letting others live freely, even when it is hard." The riders nodded, and Thomas felt a weight lift from his chest. The decision had been made and it was the right one. Naya would return to her people as she had been meant to. But the bond they had formed over these weeks could not be erased. They had shared danger, lessons, and understanding that went beyond words. Over the next few days, Thomas helped prepare Naya's return. They gathered supplies for the journey, repaired paths, and ensured the land was ready for her departure. The Apache tribe had arranged for her safe passage, and Thomas was to accompany her part of the way, ensuring no harm came to her. As they traveled together, the bond between them deepened. Thomas learned more about her life, her family, and the responsibilities she carried. She spoke of her father, the chief, and the delicate balance he maintained between his people and the settlers. Thomas realized how much courage and wisdom it took to be a leader, and how much strength she had inherited. One evening, as they rested by a small stream, Thomas asked her quietly, "Will you ever forgive me for the way this began?" Naya looked at him with calm eyes. "I do not need to forgive," she said. "You have acted with integrity. You have learned what many never do, that respect and courage matter more than survival alone." Thomas felt a warmth in his chest, a sense of peace he had never known. He realized that the greatest debt he had settled was not the one to Caldwell, nor the one to the land, but the debt to his own conscience. He had acted rightly when it mattered most, and that gave him a sense of strength he could carry for the rest of his life. When they reached the Apache territory, the chief himself awaited them. Thomas felt nervous, unsure of how he would be received. But as Naya stepped forward, speaking to her father with calm authority, Thomas realized that he had done the right thing. The chief listened to Naya's account of their journey and Thomas's protection of her, and then he turned to Thomas with measured eyes. "You have acted with honor," the chief said. "You have kept her safe and respected her. That is a debt paid more fully than many could ever achieve. Go in peace." Thomas bowed slightly, relief and gratitude washing over him. Naya turned to him, her expression softening. "You have changed," she said quietly. "The man I met weeks ago has grown. Courage is in your heart now, not just your hands." Thomas smiled, feeling a deep respect and admiration for her. "You have taught me more than I could have imagined," he said. They parted with quiet dignity. Naya returned to her people, her place with her tribe restored. Thomas watched her disappear into the distance, feeling a mixture of sadness and pride. He had lost the daily presence of someone remarkable, but he had gained something far greater: understanding, wisdom, and the knowledge that acting with honor was always the right choice. In the weeks that followed, Thomas's ranch began to recover. Word spread of his actions, and traders and neighbors treated him with newfound respect. The lessons he had learned with Naya remained with him. He tended the land with renewed care, understanding that patience and attention could bring life back to even the driest soil. He worked with honor, not just for survival, but for the dignity of his land and himself. Thomas often thought of Naya. He remembered her quiet strength, her careful guidance, and the lessons she had taught him. Though she was no longer with him, her influence remained. He carried her teachings in his actions, in the way he treated others, and in the way he lived his life. One evening, as he sat on the porch watching the sun set, Thomas realized something profound. Life had tested him in ways he had never expected, placing him in situations that demanded courage, respect, and wisdom. And he had faced those tests, not perfectly, but with a heart that had learned to choose honor over fear. He understood now that the true measure of a man was not in the land he owned or the debts he repaid, but in the choices he made when confronted with responsibility and danger. And for Thomas Reed, those choices had shaped a life far richer than any he could have imagined. The ranch, once dry and empty, now held promise. The land, like Thomas himself, had endured trials and emerged stronger. And though Naya's presence was gone, the lessons she had left remained, quiet, steady, and powerful, guiding Thomas toward a future filled with courage, respect, and honor. As the stars appeared in the night sky, Thomas felt a calm he had never known before. He had survived, yes, but more importantly, he had learned what it meant to live rightly. And that knowledge, earned through trials and choices, would remain with him for the rest of his days. The quiet of the frontier night held a sense of peace. Thomas knew that challenges would come again, as they always did in life, but he also knew he was ready. He had faced the greatest test of all, to act with courage and integrity when it mattered most. And in that knowledge, Thomas found something far more valuable than wealth, land, or power. He found the strength of a man who had learned to honor life itself, and in doing so had truly grown. The story of those days, the debt settled, and the journey of trust and courage would remain in Thomas's memory forever. And though the frontier stretched vast and unpredictable around him, he faced it now with a heart steady, guided by honor, and strengthened by the bond he had shared with someone extraordinary.